I think it's working. Yeah, it's working.
Have a great focus group.
Danke dir.
Thank you.
Hi.
Okay, so this is the first focus group that we've conducted, so it might be a bit informal, but we'll just get started anyway. So you have your name tags. The point of this focus group is to get you guys to discuss with each other, not really to me, but I will facilitate the discussion. So we've invited you to join this focus group about mobile phone purchase patterns. And we want to understand deeper like what kind of attributes or features you guys look at when purchasing a phone and any other factors that you can think of. Later on, we'll ask you to name some specific brands so that we can get more information about brand awareness. And we've chosen you because you've grown up in Hong Kong or you were born here, and we want to know how Hong Kong culture and environment has shaped your preferences. Okay, so hopefully all your phones are on silent, and if you do get a call, you can quietly leave and come back once you're done. Okay, so the first question is for you to briefly introduce yourself and tell us what phone brand you're using and any other phone history that's interesting or that would show anything about your preferences for now. You can start from this side.
Okay, so guys, my name is Brian. I've been living in Hong Kong for around 5 to 8 years, and some of the phone brands that I've been using, I've used and I'm just using right now are Samsung, Apple, and I think Google Pixel as well. But I feel like the main reason why I'm attached to these brands is because these brands actually are like most exposed to me. Around when I live. So when I go to a shopping mall or when I go to the nearest phone store, I see mostly Samsung Galaxy phones. I see iPhones. So these brands are what just connects to me like the fastest. That's why I'm really attached to these phones. And of course, if some phone brands are actually connecting to me by either like showing me wherever I go, of course I will be more interested in those. But it seems to me that the phones that I've used and I've been using are like mostly the brands which are always there for me.
So I'm Crystal. I was born in Hong Kong, and I'm currently using Apple. Can I say more?
No.
So my name is Anna, and I also currently live in Hong Kong, and I'm using Apple. And my first phone actually is Apple. So I'll just keep changing different Apple's phone. So there's a reason why I choose Apple.
Yeah, I'm Alexis. Went to school here, and have an iPhone too.
Okay.
Why? I didn't pay for it, so.
My name is Jackie. I've been living in Hong Kong for like 5 years now, and I currently use an Android phone, like a OnePlus One.
Okay.
Okay, OnePlus One. That's the earliest model.
Well, no, I use a third one.
Oh, okay. My name is William. I was born and raised in Hong Kong, and I'm using also an Android phone. I'm using an LG. I've been using LG since for like 4 years. Yeah, at least 4 years, because I started with a LG G2. That was a very old model many years ago, and then I swapped to G4, and then I am currently on G6. So I've been using 3 generations, and I don't want to bother to change to other brands. Yeah, so that's why I stuck with LG.
Do you like the G7 or like the V30, like those new brands?
Well, I think I'm going to use my current phone till it cannot function anymore. So I didn't really log into any new models.
Okay, so that actually links to another question I have, which is why you usually change your phone. So if we could go in a circle again.
Okay. One of the main reasons I changed my phone is the decrease in all the dysfunctions. So, for example, the battery life decreases really fast, and also when I'm surfing anything, when I go on a social network or anything, it's really slow. It gets slow. I can't just do things, and especially the main system-wise is for Android it's the Android system, and also for Apple it's the iOS. Like if the system is not updated like to the most recent one, some apps you can't use it because like the really recent apps they're only providing to like the latest software. So if you don't update, then we always get we can't get access to these apps or softwares. that's why I update. I mean, that's why I go and buy again to the latest phones.
Okay, so I change my phone usually because if I broke my phone, I'll change it because I'm this kind of person who drops my phone a lot, and if the screen's broken, I'll just change it.
So for me, like as Brian said, I would change my phone because the battery problems, and sometimes it just come up with the latest version. So I would just go for the latest one.
I mean, I like to change it around more to get a few different brands and what each of them have to offer. But in general, it's more like battery life, like decreasing as time goes. Usually memory, depending on how much each phone has, and well, the fact that it gets slow.
Yeah.
I mean, that pisses me off. So I like to change brand and see what each has to offer.
Okay. I'd say more or less the same. Like the main thing is if it gets slow, because over time they tend to slow down quite a bit. And also if there's like a new phone out that I really like, it's very appealing, then I might get it.
For me, it's also about the performance issue, especially a few more years ago, because in the past the performance really increased really fast. The new generations usually beat the old generations by a lot. But I think in recent years I tend to slow my pace of changing phones because I think the growth of the performance have kind of slowed. I mean, the growth is slowing, so I tend not to swap to a new phone unless I really have problems with especially the batteries, because usually they are not you cannot change the battery nowadays.
Yeah, I think it's function-wise, it's not like as much like changing from the previous versions, right? It's like and the designs too, like unless if it's like a really innovative change, then maybe like we are all decide to change.
Yeah. So you have paper with you right now. Maybe you'd write out a few of the things you look for when you buy a smartphone. Just anything that comes to your mind and how important it is to you. When you're about done, you can just stop writing and I'll know. Okay. Okay, so we've talked about what you look for in a phone, and now we'll start discussing what you use the phone for, mostly. Like, it could be social media, emails, or other things?
I think the first thing would be the notifications and connections with other things that I'm attached to. So of course social media is one, and another one is since I'm a student, like the school softwares like the emails and also our school campus, and even like for information that I want to put in, like the notes and also alarm, like it's just a part of every thing that I do in my life. So the most use it would be like the connections with what I have, like for friends and for school, like everything that's in me. I think phone is the central device that actually allows me to connect to all these things around me.
Social media. To add on sorry, what he said. I think also map is like sometimes I can't really find my way, and I use Google Map and stuff, and yeah, I need my phone for that. And then calendar, because I write all my schedule and everything on my phone's calendar. So if I don't have my phone, I won't know when my next meeting is or anything, and stuff like that. Yeah.
So personally, I think social media. And secondly, I would like to use my phone to take photos. Sometimes go out with friends, taking selfies, such like that.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, social media, of course. Like
You guys
all
can
of us.
name specific applications if you want.
Yeah, I mean, Instagram, Snapchat, Messenger, perhaps WhatsApp. I mean, off the top of my head. WeChat, of course. Yeah. All of those, and I mean, what else? Camera quality, things like that. Battery life, for sure. Just, I suppose those are one of the most important ones. Networking, mobile.
Yeah, so do you want to discuss a bit more about the camera quality? Because of how
Yeah.
important that is to you?
I think the camera call, because there are also many different apps, like camera apps that are available. So although like every phone has its main camera function, but I prefer to use like the camera apps instead, because I don't know, they have some better filtering like functions, which actually makes better quality photos from my view and my perspective. So
Filters?
yeah, like the brightness, or like the like you can crop, or like, I mean just these add-on functions like in the apps. So that's what it's easier for me to do, because like the main one has so many functions and so many unnecessary functions as well. Like I don't really use the timer or like all these things, but like there's like all the functions are like everywhere, and like it's kind of complicated. So that's why I just move on to like simple camera apps, and that's when I get to install these apps. And so camera is important, but I guess if nowadays, because the improvements is not as fast as you said, so I feel like camera is something that I look at after like the more important things, like the function wise and like the size and weight of the phone.
Wait, what was the question?
Just like things you look out for when you buy the phone, I guess. So if you don't really care about camera quality, what do you really care about?
Oh, okay. Like I'd say like other like technical specifications. So like the processor, screen resolution, like whether or not it has NFC. Because one thing I use a lot is like Google Wallet. So I pay through my phone, and if it doesn't have NFC, then I can't really make payments. So it's one thing I really look out for. Also, like the appearance is a big factor, I'd say. Like the phone has to look good, and
Aesthetic.
it has to be aesthetic at the end of the day. And size is also something that matters.
Price?
Price. Oh, user interface. So if it's intuitive and it feels, if I like the user interface.
So would you go to like the stores to try out the phone before you buy it?
I mean, the main thing is to hear what other people say. So if they say that there are certain problems with it, then I'll sort of bear that in mind.
Okay. So that links to the purchase decision. So how do you make the decision? Do you look for information from other people like you do? Or do you go online or go to the actual store to try out the phone? What do you usually do?
Well, for me, I usually go to read reviews online, because many people are doing unboxing videos on YouTube and other websites, and I would tend to check out those unboxing reviews first, and then because usually they tend to be more in depth, more professional, especially when the media does it. And then For the tryout, it depends, because sometimes when I feel like I'm very confident that I'm going for certain model, I will just buy it directly. Or when my old phone was broken and I desperately need a new one, then I would just go to buy a new phone directly. But if I'm thinking about changing a phone and I don't immediately need it, maybe I will try a few models.
Okay. So does anyone have anything to add on to that?
All three, I suppose. I mean, online reviews are definitely something you should look out for. But I'm sure we probably have friends or people that we know that have maybe a phone we might look for. And I mean, a review with someone who's had it for a while is definitely worth it. And I mean, trying out in the store itself might also give you a good feel for what you're trying to get yourself into.
Right. Okay. So now we'll go into specific brands. So off the top of your head, can you write down a few phone brands on your paper?
You mean write down
Yeah.
the brand we know?
That you thought of. If you're done, you can pass the paper to me. Okay, so someone's supposed to help me with this, but they all left, so I have to do this myself. Hold on. Okay, so it seems like Apple is at the top of many of your lists. So maybe we could discuss about your perception of Apple as a brand and also the products that they have.
I think the first biggest impression of Apple is that it's really big, and that it just feels like a global scale where wherever you go, you will find an Apple store. Like, although you haven't been to all places in the world, but you feel like wherever you go, you can always get access to Apple. And if you have entered the Apple store, you know how the service works there, and it's feels like you already entered like their company or into a new place where everything's there, and all you have to do is just ask questions and get all the trying experience with their phones, the newest editions and all that. So that's like the best experience, I would say, that Apple provides, which makes most people more attached to it because they like the experience and they enjoy the experience, which is, I think, the main driving factor that actually makes people buy Apple products.
Okay, does anyone have anything to add?
It's that Apple products generally, as far as like phones and in this case phones go, like they tend to be very consistent, fairly consistent across like all the different things. So as far as speed goes, they're very well optimized. Like as far as memory management, the camera processing is really good. So for many people, they buy Apple like phones because they really like the camera. Like they may use an Android phone, but they also use an Apple phone because like the camera and the software. So that's one thing that draws a lot of people.
They feel really high tech, and they're constantly coming out with new products, and you always feel like the new product is the best.
Okay.
So I want to add a point. Actually, Apple using their own system. So when you get used to the Apple system, it's really hard for you to familiar with another system like Android. So this is also the main reason why I just keep using Apple.
Yeah, like even if you're using MacBook, like that's a laptop, but then if you want to go and look for a new laptop, if you have an iPhone, like if you have an Apple product as your phone, then it's not really easy for you to switch to other laptops, right? You eventually end up buying the new MacBook again.
Yeah, it's not also my friends, many of them were using Apple products. So sometimes you're using some of the function like AirDrop. Like, yeah, you will going using the Apple.
Yeah, Apple indeed has a very sophisticated ecosystem. I think. Yeah, Apple is. I think it's the only brand that makes its own OS, and I think the core of the Apple's product is their own OS, because that's really unbeatable, and I think it's the reason why many people just stick with Apple, and yeah, that's the one thing that other brands cannot do.
Okay, so another brand that I see a lot is Samsung. So could you compare Apple and Samsung, like from your perspective?
Samsung explodes.
Right? Bad PR.
I mean, they're direct competitors, I'd say. Yeah, I mean, they are each other's competitors, and I mean, they're always in a race to like launch a new product that would be better than the other one. But I feel like Apple's getting to a point. I mean, like if you look back in 2007, since they launched the first iPhone, up until now, they make great progress, but it gets to a point where I don't know, they run out of things to add to the phone, and I feel like they need to innovate a little bit more there. But I feel like Samsung is just as good from a consumer side, where they deliver just as much, but with an Android running that phone.
Alright, so this links to brand loyalty, as in Anna, you said that you use Apple constantly, right? Changing to new models as they come out. So maybe if brand loyalty does apply to you, if you feel like you do, or if you do always choose the same phone, then maybe you could talk about that, just for the ones that are applicable. So you choose Apple most of the time, right?
Yeah.
So maybe reasons why you do that?
So actually my first phone is Apple. So the first time I using my phone actually is getting used to the Apple system. So when you keep going, my friends that keep using iPhone, and because there's no huge difference in the function, so you will just keep buying the latest model, and there's no extra time for you to need it to accept another kind of function. So I will just keep sticking into this brand actually.
By function, you mean like every model is not that different from each other?
So there will not be a huge difference. They will also just change the quality of the camera system, and maybe just the surface or the keyboards, but there's not a huge difference in this.
I think the main idea is, even though it's different, we don't really care about the difference, because we are too attached to one brand, and if let's say one phone's camera has 60 megapixels and the other camera has 19 megapixels, and if we're not really caring about the camera, like why should we switch to another brand and like spend another extra time to get used to the new system, whereas we can just be totally satisfied with the 16 megapixel camera. So I guess even though there are differences in the functions, the priority, the importance is not really the highest. That's why I think we don't really switch.
So it's about the comfort of staying with the
I
same.
think it's more like what's familiar.
Mm.
So it's like while they may change things, it's still familiar enough for them to like adapt and get used to it.
It's the same platform. I mean, I'd go as far to say like every iPhone, iPad, whatever you work with, like it runs the same system. So it's basically the same thing. Like it's you don't need to learn anything new. But I mean, this is just me personally. I wouldn't have a problem changing my iPhone for something like an Android from any other company, as long as it provides me with the same, things I'm looking for.
So we have one person loyal to Apple. Is anyone brand loyal to any other?
I think I can talk about how I'm quite attached to Samsung, because when I experienced the customer service, it was really nice. They actually listened to like all the problems, and because of like their service and the experience that I got when I had a problem with my Samsung phone, and they managed to solve it, and they provided like better service. So because of that good experience and the good impression that I got, I just stayed with Samsung, and at least for a little while until something negative happens, which hasn't happened yet, and is likely to just be good continuously. That's why I'm more attached to this brand.
Alright, so our group is actually doing a study with Huawei. So we'd like to understand more about your perception of Huawei and their products.
I think Huawei has already developed a lot of good functions at the phones with really competitive systems functions, even the models and designs. What I personally think is the access to the people, especially to the people in Hong Kong. I have, in general, I haven't seen like a lot of Huawei stores or any places where there are a lot of Huawei phones for me to try or even see how it works. And because of that, because of no access, or at least I don't know where the places are, and compared to other phone brands which they are easily accessible, and we all know where the Apple store is in Hong Kong, because of that I feel like people just stick to what's like available there or what they think is available.
Does anyone else have anything to say?
I mean, Apple's one step ahead of the game of everyone, so I mean, you can't compete with that for now at least. And as far as how Huawei goes, I mean, I don't have too much experience like with it and stuff. I mean, Xiaomi on the other hand, yeah. But what I can say, from friends and things that I've seen, purely observational, I can see the camera itself, quality, and the microphone itself. Can't really compare with Apple, for example. But I can see them on the rise for the next 5-10 years, coming out with something that will probably change. I mean, at least the Chinese market, for example.
And I think Huawei, they have two systems and it depends on where you buy their phones. And also my friends struggle about that because if you get your phone in mainland China, for example, you can't use it outside. So they just can't get access to Google and stuff and they struggle a lot.
Yeah, you can't change the app store.
Yeah, and you can't do anything about it.
Our perception of Huawei, right?
Yeah.
Apparently Huawei is a really big company. So of all the cell phone manufacturers, they rank top 5 as far as number of phones sold.
Yeah.
But I only know a few people, some of my friends who actually use Huawei phones. I don't in my day to day I don't see many people using Huawei phones, but it's supposed to be quite big. And my impression of the product overall is that it's still a mediocre phone in my opinion. It's as far as software goes, I don't really like the skin of Android because it uses Android, but it has heavy customizations over it, which makes it slow over time, and the components that they use are alright.
And I have some concern over Huawei's background. Although it branded itself as a private company, but I don't really think so because depending on the connection between it and the Chinese government, I don't really think it's really a private company. I think it's heavily controlled by the Chinese government maybe as a political use because I always heard people about their phone sending their data to somewhere in China, maybe their agency or something, and so I really have concern over not only Huawei but all the Chinese phone companies.
I think this the reason why so many Western countries against these brands. So you cannot hardly see that foreigners are using Huawei because the Huawei cannot get into the new market because of this political problem. I think.
Political problems.
Their fundamental system, right, when they make their phones, where people buy phones from mainland China, and they really, by doing that, they, especially the Western people will feel more limited and they don't feel free enough to get access to other platforms because mainland China has restricted some of those, which are really used by most people in the Western countries and also the other parts of the world.
Potentially, but I mean, as you mentioned earlier, the fact that it's a different app store, how it runs, if you buy in mainland China or if you buy it outside. But if you also take into consideration that anywhere outside of China, you're running against competitors like Samsung, Apple, and even Nokia. I mean, I think it's really hard to try and convince them once these markets already established to such companies who have been delivering something of decent quality over a consistent amount of years. So, fair enough.
Okay. So the next question is a theoretical one. If you were the manager of Huawei, how would you try to convince more Hong Kong people to use the phone, to buy the phone? As in, that includes what is stopping you currently, and how would you kind of solve that?
I think it's really difficult, but what I would at least raise a point for a discussion would be to try to increase the amount of access. As I say it again, if people are not connected to the brand, it's already limiting the possibility to convince the consumers to buy. So if it's not there, then, or if the consumers think that it's not there, then there is no point continuing, because it's consumers will only care about what they see, and if they don't see what's there, it's more likely that they will be attached to other phone brands.
I mean, it's hard, like, it's a sensitive topic, you know, because, like you said, like, Chinese government, you know, like, monitoring the devices and things like that. I mean, you guys saw the protests, like, you know what I mean? Like, it's already hard enough, like, to get Chinese products here, so to say. But, I mean, it will be inevitable at some point, but from another point of view, if they want to throw out their competitors, or at least, like, grow a little bit more in the market here, I mean, if the government is behind all of this, I'm sure they can subsidize them in some way so that they can lower their prices and look more attractive, or, you know, they can get their engineers to get them, you know, a more interactive display, I don't know, more memory, better camera quality, microphone, or even expand their app store for that matter.
Actually, I'm not sure like what Huawei could do, because like of all the things that companies usually would do, so say like marketing or increase accessibility, like Huawei already sort of has that, because Huawei phones are already like pretty much readily available in a lot of stores in Hong Kong.
Yeah, like
So
Fortress.
in Fortress and like those stores, you can already find Huawei phones and like the various different models. And then like as far as marketing goes, like they already have extensive ad campaigns in Hong Kong and like other countries around the world.
So what do you think are the factors that's causing Hong Kong people to like hesitate or?
Competition, I guess, because like in locals, I know that a lot of people they do have brand loyalty to other brands like Apple and Samsung, and then when it comes to like if they choose a phone, of course they will choose Samsung or Apple, except for like as their first choice.
Potential factor, government once more, brand loyalty, the fact that, you know, these brands are already established in the market here and they're already big, so it's hard to get someone to like, I mean, just a simple analogy, if I get you to play a sport like football and I get you used to it, why would I get to you and be like, yeah, let's play basketball? You see what I mean? Like,
So
it's hard, yeah.
I think it's not just Huawei, but in terms of any other brands too. Especially for phone brands, once we are attached with one brand, it's just not easy to change to other phone brands unless they're really similar in the way they provide their service, or as you said, like the systems or the other functions. If it's not so similar, and if they just try to say that ours is different, then because they keep saying that it's different in terms of what the design or what their competitive advantages, then the more likely that we will not go for it because it's so different, and we have to spend more time to get attached to it and to get used to it.
I think Huawei should maybe to create some innovative function compared with other phones brand, and also lower down the price. Maybe this is the competitive advantage for Huawei to stand out the market.
Yeah, I think I agree with that point about low price, because right now Huawei phones aren't cheap. Like they cost as much as like Samsung phones, but in that case most people just favor Samsung because it's more familiar. I think actually one thing Huawei could do, probably like release a phone with stock Android, because a lot of people in the Android community like stock Android.
Stock Android.
Yeah, stock Android. So it's just like without modifications. It's like every basically it's like the main operating system that all Android phones operate on, but then they add their own like customizations, which tends to like kind of slow the phone down and like draw a lot of people away from the phone.
So also join the community of the original Android system, right? Then,
Kind of, yeah.
Then they can actually potentially increase some customers.
Okay.
Fair enough. And I mean, on top of all of that, perhaps rethink a marketing campaign.
what do you think would be effective?
I mean, if we were talking about a new phone, something like they can release a new product, you know, that's not quote unquote like revolutionary, but you know, something that at least plays in the same league as the big boys, you know. So, and then with that, if they make a hell of a marketing campaign here, I'm sure they, you know, could increase their power in the market. Yeah.
Or one thing they can do is to actually deliver their a clear message to the people. So for Apple, I know is they have a statement of like why they make the products is they want to challenge the status quo, and they want everybody to think creatively, and that actually makes the world a better place. They have this really promising start of like why they make their products, and I think not many people are aware of what Huawei is trying to message, is what Huawei's message is. So if more people know what is Huawei's role in the community or in the community of the phones and the products which are like everyone's it's part of everyone's life now. So if we know Huawei's message clearly, maybe that can potentially help some customers to know more about Huawei or get interested in Huawei's products.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, the fact that they don't have a clear message in itself, and the fact that, you know, Apple is a case apart for the fact that they run a different system. I mean, they've innovated in the fact that like they have their own thing going for them, so there's no way you can replicate that. So that if you're gonna talk about Huawei running on a customized Android system, they need to be able to innovate in a way that, you know, makes them different from the rest and somehow better. And I mean, I can't think of anything right now. I mean, I don't work for them, but you know, that's for them to decide. But you know, something along those lines.
Okay, so wrapping up, I think it would be Chinese products. Like, do you feel any hesitance towards using Chinese products? And is that a possible reason why you haven't chosen Huawei as a phone?
I don't think it's Chinese product problem. It's more like Huawei themselves associated too much with the Chinese government.
The Chinese government.
It's just too obvious. It's not about it's China, made in China.
Yeah, I mean, not necessarily the fact that it's Chinese. I mean, it could be from anywhere. It could be from Japan for all I care. But it's the fact. I mean, what they can deliver through their products and services in comparison to what their competitors are doing. That's what they lose. So it's not China itself. I mean, it's not like, oh yeah, it's made in China, like a bullshit. Everything's made in China, you know. But the fact that, you know, that's how they run their stuff, and they're just not there yet.
Okay. Yeah, I think we're done for today. Thank you so much. I mean, if you're interested in our study, we could totally send you our findings later.